Admiral Kang Daeho stood in the main control room of Nexus Station, looking at the holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Red warning lights blinked across dozens of star systems. Each light meant another outpost had gone silent. Another colony had stopped sending signals. Another group of people had vanished without a trace. The station buzzed with activity. Officers from 7 different alien species worked side by side, their voices mixing into a chorus of worry and confusion. Some spoke in clicks and whistles. Others used telepathy that made the air shimmer. All of them were afraid. Kang had seen many battles in his 30 years of service. He had fought pirates, rebels, and even rogue AI systems, but nothing had prepared him for this. Whatever was destroying the outposts left no evidence behind. No wreckage, no bodies, no clues. Commander Park Ji-won hurried across the room, her boots clicking on the metal floor. She carried a data pad that glowed with fresh information. Her face was pale and her hands shook slightly as she approached the Admiral. "Sir, we have new readings from the Kepler sector," she said, her voice tight with stress. "The energy signatures are getting stronger. Whatever is out there, it's moving toward the core systems." Kang took the data pad and studied the numbers. The readings made no sense. The energy output was massive, but it came from a source too small to generate such power. It was like finding the heat of a star coming from a candle. "How many ships have we lost contact with now?" Kang asked. 47 outposts and 12 patrol fleets, Park replied. "All in the same region, all within the past 2 weeks. The Admiral set down the data pad and activated the main communication system. His voice echoed through every section of the massive station. "All senior commanders report to Conference Room Alpha immediately. Emergency War Council in session." Within minutes, the conference room filled with the galaxy's most powerful military leaders. Captain Lee Hyojin entered first, representing the human colonial fleet. Her ship, the Soul's Pride, was docked at the station for routine maintenance. She never expected to be called into a crisis meeting. Behind her came Captain Oh Bin Woo, of the Vextai fleet. His crystalline body reflected the room's lights, creating rainbow patterns on the walls. The Vextai were energy beings who lived inside crystal shells. Their ships could channel pure energy as weapons. Commander Yoon Tae-kyung arrived next, his heavy footsteps announcing his presence. He led the Roktar forces, and his rock-like skin showed the scars of many battles. The Roktar built their ships from the strongest materials in the galaxy. Their vessels could survive almost anything. The other commanders followed quickly. The insectoid Hiver representative clicked her mandibles nervously. The aquatic Merthani floated in a water-filled suit, the gaseous ether being appeared as a shifting cloud of light. The reptilian Scar commander hissed softly as he took his seat. Lieutenant Kim So-young set up the main display screen. She was the Coalition's best tactical analyst, known for solving puzzles that stumped everyone else. But the data she was about to show had left even her confused. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings," Admiral Kang began, "we face a threat unlike anything in recorded history. Lieutenant Kim will brief you on what we know." Kim activated the display, showing a map of the affected sectors. 2 weeks ago, we lost contact with Research Station Beta 7. We assumed it was a communication failure. Then Station Beta 8 went silent. Then Beta 9. The pattern continued until we realized something was hunting our outposts. The display zoomed in on the attack sites. We sent investigation teams to 3 locations. What they found was impossible. The stations were completely gone. Not destroyed. Gone. As if they had never existed. No debris field, no radiation, no trace elements. Nothing. Captain Lee leaned forward in her chair. "What about the people?" "Gone with the stations," Kim replied. "We estimate over 30,000 people have vanished. Military personnel, civilians, researchers, even the automated systems. Everything just disappeared." The Hiver commander chittered anxiously. "My swarm ships reported strange energy readings before Station Beta 12 vanished. The energy felt wrong, like it came from somewhere else." "Somewhere else?" asked Captain O, his crystal body brightening with interest. Not from our universe, the Hiver explained. The energy patterns don't match anything in our databases. It's like the attacks come from outside reality itself. Commander Yoon slammed his stone fist on the table. Impossible. Nothing exists outside reality. Whatever this is, it follows the same physical laws as everything else. We just need to hit it hard enough. Kim changed the display to show energy. Readings. I wish it were that simple, Commander. Look at these numbers. The attacking force generates more power than our largest battle stations, but the source appears to be ship-sized. The physics don't work. Admiral Kang studied the faces around the table. Each commander represented hundreds or thousands of ships. Together, they controlled the largest military force in galactic history. Surely they could handle any threat? What's our current fleet strength? Kang asked. Commander Park consulted her data pad. We can assemble 8,000 capital ships within 48 hours, including support vessels and fighters. We're looking at over 10,000 ships total. Crew strength? Approximately 2 million personnel across all species, Park replied. The numbers were staggering. No force in history had been able to stand against such overwhelming power. The combined fleets had weapons that could crack planets and shields that could deflect stellar radiation. Captain Lee looked uncomfortable. Sir, with respect, maybe we should try communication first. If this is some kind of misunderstanding— 30,000 people are dead or missing, interrupted the Scar commander, his voice a low growl. There's no misunderstanding about that. But we don't know what we're dealing with, Lee continued. What if it's not hostile? What if it's trying to communicate and we just don't understand? Lieutenant Kim brought up another display. Captain Lee raises a good point. The attack pattern is unusual. The outposts that were destroyed were all research stations or military bases. Civilian colonies in the same sectors were left untouched. So whatever this is, it's specifically targeting military and research installations. Admiral Kang mused. That suggests intelligence, planning, maybe even a message. The ether being pulsed with shifting colors, its form of speech. Commander Park translated from the light patterns. The ether representative suggests the attacker might be testing our defenses, learning our capabilities before a larger assault. All. The more reason to strike first, Commander Yoon said. We assemble our fleets and destroy this threat before it can study us further. Captain O's crystal body dimmed thoughtfully. Or we could be walking into a trap. What if this enemy wants us to gather our forces? What if the attacks on the outposts are bait? The room fell silent as everyone considered this possibility. A trap that used 30,000 lives as bait would be monstrous beyond imagination. Admiral Kang made his decision. We can't ignore this threat any longer. Every day we wait, more people die. I'm authorizing the assembly of Joint Task Force Omega. All available ships will rendezvous at the Kepler Nebula in 36 hours. The Kepler Nebula? Captain Lee asked. That's right in the path of the attacks. Exactly, Kang replied. We'll intercept this threat before it reaches the core systems. Whatever destroyed those outposts will have to go through the galaxy's strongest armadas. The commanders began discussing logistics and battle formations. Ship assignments were made. Supply. Lines were planned. Communication protocols were established. The largest military operation in galactic history was taking shape. But as the meeting continued, none of them noticed the small anomaly in the sensor readings. Deep in space, something was watching them, something that had been waiting for exactly this moment. The trap was already set. The bait had been taken, and humanity's children were coming home. The Kepler Nebula stretched across space like a cosmic painting. Clouds of gas and dust swirled in brilliant colors, purple, gold, and electric blue. Inside this beautiful chaos, the largest fleet in galactic history took position. Admiral Kang stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Galactic Unity. Through the main view screen, he could see hundreds of ships forming into battle lines. Each vessel represented years of engineering and countless resources. Together, they formed a wall of firepower that could level star systems. The human ships took positions at the rear of the formation. Captain Lee watched from the bridge of Soul's Pride as the alien vessels moved into their assigned positions. Her ship was small compared to the massive alien dreadnoughts, but she felt proud to serve alongside such powerful allies. "Admiral, we're detecting movement in the nebula," reported Commander Park from the sensor station. "Something's coming through the gas clouds." On the main screen, a single dot appeared. At first, it looked like a piece of space debris, but as it grew closer, the shape became clearer. It was a ship, but unlike anything they had seen before, the vessel was roughly human in design, with the familiar angular hull and engine placement. But something about it seemed wrong. The proportions were off. The surface seemed to shift and blur, like looking at something underwater. Energy readings from the ship made no sense at all. "It's smaller than a cruiser," reported Lieutenant Kim from her analysis station. "But the power output is incredible. I'm reading energy levels that should require a ship 10 times larger." Captain O stood on the bridge of his crystal ship, watching the approaching vessel with growing unease. The Vextai were energy beings, and they could sense things that other species missed. What he felt from this ship made his crystal shell vibrate with fear. "Something's not right," he told his crew. "The energy patterns are wrong. It's like looking at a shadow cast by light that doesn't exist." Commander Yoon prepared his weapons on the massive Rocktar battleship. His people believed in simple solutions. If something threatened them, they destroyed it. The approaching ship might be strange, but it was still just one vessel against 10,000. "All ships, this is Admiral Kang." The communication system crackled. "Unknown vessel is approaching our position. Prepare for first contact protocols." The fleet adjusted its formation, creating a perfect sphere around the approaching ship. Every weapon in the Armada could target it simultaneously. Escape would be impossible. Captain O opened a channel to the unknown vessel. He spoke in the common galactic language, then switched to other tongues, mathematical patterns, musical tones, light signals, every form of communication known to the civilized galaxy. The response came in a language that made Captain Lee's blood run cold. It was Korean, but not the modern Korean she knew. It was ancient, formal, the way her grandmother might have spoken centuries ago. "I am Commander Ro Sung-min of the Terran defense ship Exodus. You have 15 seconds to withdraw your forces." The name hit the human ships like a physical blow. Every human officer in the fleet knew the story of the Exodus. It was legend, myth, a tale told to children about the early days of space exploration. Captain Lee activated her private communication to Admiral Kang. "Sir, the Exodus was one of Earth's colony ships. It launched over 300 years ago, during the Great Evacuation. It was supposed to find a new home for our people when Earth became uninhabitable." "I know the story, Captain," Kang replied tersely. "The ship disappeared in deep space. All hands presumed lost." "But if that's really the Exodus..." Lee's voice trailed off. The implications were staggering. Lieutenant Kim was frantically scanning the approaching vessel. Her instruments showed readings that violated everything she knew about physics. The ship seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Parts of it appeared to be phasing in and out of reality. "Admiral, permission to communicate directly with the Exodus," Captain Lee requested. "As a human officer, I might be able to establish better contact." "Denied," Kang replied firmly. "This is a coalition operation. We follow protocol." The unknown ship continued its approach, moving at a steady pace that seemed almost casual. It showed no sign of slowing or changing course. The massive fleet might as well have been empty space for all the attention it paid to them. Commander Park tried to scan the ship's defenses. Her instruments detected shield generators, but the readings made no sense. The shield seemed to extend into dimensions that didn't exist. It was like trying to measure the height of a shadow. "Unknown vessel, This is Admiral Kang of the Galactic Defense Coalition, he broadcast on all frequencies. You are approaching a military formation. State your intentions immediately. The response came in that same ancient Korean. I am Commander Ro Sung-min. My intentions are the defense of humanity and the preservation of this galaxy. Your forces represent a threat to galactic security. Withdraw immediately. The statement was absurd. One ship threatening 10,000. A single vessel claiming to defend the galaxy against the combined might of 7 civilizations. Yet something in Commander Ro's voice made even the bravest officers feel uncertain. Captain O adjusted his crystal form to better sense the energy patterns around the Exodus. What he felt made him wish he couldn't sense anything at all. The ship wasn't just powered by energy. It was energy, held together by forces that shouldn't exist. Admiral, O transmitted on a private channel, I'm reading impossible energy signatures. This ship doesn't follow our laws of physics. My people have legends about beings that exist outside reality. I think we might be facing something like that. Commander Yoon scoffed at the warning. Legends and superstitions. It's just advanced technology. Nothing that can't be destroyed by enough firepower. The Hiver commander chittered nervously as her swarm ships took defensive positions. Her insects could sense something the others missed. The space around the Exodus felt wrong, like a wound in reality itself. 10 seconds, Commander Ro's voice announced calmly. Admiral Kang made his decision. All ships, target the unknown vessel. Prepare to fire on my command. Thousands of weapon systems powered up simultaneously. Plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum torpedoes, gravitational disruptors. Enough destructive force to vaporize moons focused on a single ship. 5 seconds. Lieutenant Kim watched her sensor readings with growing horror. The power output from the Exodus was increasing exponentially. Whatever weapons it carried were charging up, and the energy signature was unlike anything in their databases. Sir, she called to Admiral Kang, the ship is powering weapon systems. The energy patterns are completely unknown. All ships, maintain targeting, Kang ordered. On my mark, we fire everything. The ether being on one of the fleet's support ships pulsed frantically, its light patterns conveying urgent warnings that went untranslated. It had sensed something in the quantum foam, ripples of possibility that spoke of imminent disaster. Captain Lee gripped her command chair as tension filled the soul's pride. Her crew was ready for battle, but something felt terribly wrong about the situation. The Exodus had asked them to withdraw. Maybe they should have listened. Time's up, Commander Ro announced. The Exodus moved. What happened next couldn't be called movement in any normal sense. The ship didn't accelerate or turn. It simply stopped being in one place and started being in another. Space itself seemed to bend around it, carrying the vessel to a new position without crossing the distance between. How did it do that? Lieutenant, Kim gasped, staring at her instruments. It moved faster than light without entering hyperspace. That's impossible. The Exodus now hung in the center of the coalition formation, surrounded by the galaxy's most powerful ships. It should have been destroyed instantly. Instead, it simply waited, as if giving the massive fleet one last chance to reconsider. All ships, fire! Admiral Kang commanded. 10,000 ships opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Exodus filled with deadly energy. Plasma beams hot enough to melt asteroids converged on the single target. Quantum torpedoes capable of cracking planets streaked through the void. The combined firepower could have destroyed entire fleets. The weapons reached the Exodus and simply stopped. Not blocked by shields or deflected by armor. They stopped, as if they had forgotten how to exist. The deadly energy just faded away like morning mist. Weapons had no effect, reported Commander Park, her voice shaking. All attacks neutralized. I don't understand how. Commander Ro's voice came over the communication system one last time, still calm and measured. You should have withdrawn. Now you will learn why humanity left this galaxy behind. The real battle was about to begin. The first minute felt like an eternity. The Exodus moved through space like a ghost, appearing and disappearing in ways that broke every rule of physics. One moment it was in front of the Hiver swarm ships. The next, it materialized behind the Vex-Tai crystal formations. Space itself seemed to bend around the vessel, carrying it to impossible positions. Captain Lee watched in horror as the first ships began to die. The Hiver swarm, thousands of small fighters that moved like angry insects, simply started vanishing. Not exploded, not destroyed. They just stopped existing, as if they had never been built at all. "What kind of weapons are those?" she whispered to her tactical officer. Lieutenant Kim stared at her instruments, trying to make sense of readings that violated everything she knew. "I don't think they're weapons in any sense we understand. The Hiver ships aren't being destroyed, they're being erased." The Exodus fired beams of light that looked almost gentle, but when they touched a ship, reality seemed to break down around the target. The vessels didn't explode or burn. They aged centuries in seconds, their hulls corroding and crumbling as if thousands of years had passed in moments. Commander Yoon watched from his massive Rocktar battleship as entire squadrons of Hiver fighters ceased to exist. His people had faced many enemies, but this was beyond comprehension. The Hiver Queen ships, massive vessels that coordinated the swarm, flickered like candles in the wind and went dark. "All ships, concentrate fire on the unknown vessel," Admiral Kang commanded desperately. "Use everything we have." The Coalition fleet poured destruction into the space where the Exodus had been, but the ship was no longer there. It appeared above the formation, then below it, then somehow inside it without crossing the intervening distance. Every shot missed, not because they were poorly aimed, but because the target refused to exist where they expected it to be. The second minute brought new horrors. Captain O felt his crystal body vibrating with terror as the Exodus turned its attention to the Vex-Tai ships. His people were beings of pure energy contained within crystal shells. They thought themselves immune to physical weapons. They were wrong. The beams from the Exodus struck the crystal ships and did something impossible. They made the energy beings forget how to exist. The crystals didn't shatter or melt. They simply became empty, as if the life force within them had never been there at all. "Shield strength is meaningless," O transmitted to the other captains. "This isn't an attack on our ships. It's an attack on the concept of our existence." The Mirthani bioships fared no better. These living vessels, grown rather than built, had evolved to survive in the deepest ocean trenches of their home world. They could withstand pressures that would crush planets. But when the Exodus looked at them, they began to dissolve back into their component cells as if evolution was running backward at incredible speed. Lieutenant Kim frantically tried to analyze the attack patterns. Her computer showed readings that made no sense. The Exodus seemed to be firing at targets before it aimed at them. The weapons arrived at their destinations before they were fired, somehow violating cause and effect itself. "The ship is manipulating time," she reported to Captain Lee. "Somehow it's making effects happen before their causes. That's why our weapons can't hit it. By the time we fire, it's already moved to where it needs to be." The third minute brought complete chaos. Admiral Kang ordered a full retreat, but movement became meaningless when the enemy controlled space and time. Ships that tried to flee found themselves moving backward, approaching the Exodus instead of escaping from it. Escape pods launched in panic appeared back inside their motherships. Orders given by commanders reached their crews before the words were spoken. The massive Rocktar dreadnoughts built from neutronium and thought to be indestructible began to crumble. Their atomic bonds simply failed, as if the fundamental forces holding matter together had forgotten how to work. Mountains of impossibly dense metal turned to cosmic dust in moments. Commander Yoon, his stone-like skin cracking with stress, watched his flagship fall apart around him. "This isn't a battle. he transmitted to the remaining ships. "This is a lesson. Whatever the humans found out there in the dark, it changed them into something beyond our understanding. The ether beings, creatures of gas and light that existed, partially outside normal space, found themselves being pulled into a single dimension. Their distributed consciousness, spread across multiple planes of existence, was compressed into forms that couldn't contain them. They died screaming in frequencies that only other energy beings could hear. The Scar reptilian ships, known for their brutal efficiency and warrior culture, tried to ram the Exodus. Their vessels were designed for close combat, covered in spikes, and armor plates meant for ship-to-ship ramming. But when they approached the mysterious vessel, they found themselves moving through empty space. The Exodus existed in the same location, but somehow not in the same reality. Captain Lee realized the terrible truth as she watched her allies die. "The Exodus isn't fighting us," she told her crew. "It's teaching us, showing us what 300 years in the void can do to a species that refuses to give up." The fourth minute brought silence. The destruction stopped as suddenly as it had begun. The Exodus held position at the center of what had been the galaxy's greatest fleet. Around it floated the scattered remains of 10,000 ships, their crews, either dead or fled in whatever escape pods had survived the reality-bending assault. Of the massive coalition force, only a handful of vessels remained intact. All of them were human ships from the colonial fleet. The Soul's Pride, Busan's Hope, Gangnam Explorer, and 3 other vessels hung in space like survivors of a cosmic storm. The communication system crackled to life one final time. Commander Rowe's voice was calm, showing no emotion after the destruction of 90% of the galactic fleet. "Captain Lee Hyojin of the Soul's Pride, Captain Park Min-ho of the Busan's Hope, you and your crews will carry a message to the colonial government and to any who will listen." Captain Lee found her voice, though it shook with shock and grief. "Commander Rowe, why did you spare us? Why kill so many and let us live?" "Because you are human," Rowe replied simply. "And because someone must tell the galaxy what they have learned today. The children of Earth have returned, but we are no longer the species you remember." The Exodus began to fade, not moving away but simply becoming less real. Its outline blurred and shifted, as if it was returning to whatever impossible space it had emerged from. "Tell them that the old rules no longer apply," Commander Rowe continued. "Tell them that survival in the void requires more than ships and weapons. It requires transformation, evolution, the willingness to become something greater than what you were." Admiral Kang's voice came over the emergency frequency from one of the few surviving alien vessels. "Commander Rowe, what happened to you out there? What did you find in the darkness between the stars?" The response came as the Exodus finally disappeared completely, leaving only empty space and debris. "We found the future, Admiral, and we learned that sometimes the only way to save your children is to become something they fear." The battle was over. The galaxy's strongest armadas had lasted exactly 4 minutes. And in the silence that followed, the survivors began to understand that everything had changed. The old galaxy was gone. A new one was about to begin. The aftermath felt like waking from a nightmare, only to discover it was real. Captain Lee sat in her command chair aboard the Soul's Pride, staring at the debris field that had once been the galaxy's most powerful fleet. Pieces of crystalline, Vextay ships drifted past her view screen like glittering snow. The biomatter from destroyed Merthani vessels had formed strange clouds that pulsed with dying bioluminescence. Her crew worked in stunned silence. Communications officer Nam Gi-hun tried to establish contact with other survivors. Engineer Cho Yun-soo ran diagnostics on systems that had somehow been scanned by the Exodus during the battle. Everyone moved like people in shock, trying to process what they had witnessed. "Captain," Nam reported quietly, "I'm getting signals from 6 human ships total, all colonial vessels. No response from any alien survivors. "Keep trying," Lee ordered. "There have to be others." But deep down, she knew better. The few alien escape pods they had detected were broadcasting distress signals in languages filled with terror and madness. The survivors spoke of weapons that attacked reality itself, of seeing their comrades erased from existence. Admiral Kang's flagship had barely escaped the destruction. The Galactic Unity limped through space with half its systems offline. The bridge, Kang stood before the main display, watching the casualty reports scroll past. The numbers were almost impossible to believe. 9,734 ships destroyed or missing, Commander Park reported, her voice hollow. Estimated crew losses exceed 1.8 million beings. "How many of our ships escaped?" Kang asked. 41 vessels across all species. Most are damaged. Many report crew casualties from proximity to the impossible weapons. Lieutenant Kim worked frantically at her analysis station, trying to make sense of the data they had collected during the battle. Every reading violated known physics. The Exodus had somehow weaponized the fundamental forces of reality itself. "Sir," she called to Admiral Kang, "I'm detecting strange energy signatures on our hull. The Exodus scanned us during the battle. Every ship that survived shows signs of deep analysis." "What kind of analysis?" "Complete. Technology, biology, crew psychology, even our cultural databases. It studied us like we were specimens in a laboratory." The implications were terrifying. Whatever the Exodus had become, it now knew everything about the surviving ships and their crews. It had let them live for a reason, and that reason wasn't mercy. Captain Park Min-ho of the Busan's Hope contacted Lee on a private channel. His face on the communication screen looked years older than it had hours before. "Hyojin, what do we do now?" he asked. "How do we report this to command? How do we explain that a single human ship destroyed the combined might of 7 civilizations?" "We tell the truth," Lee replied, though she wasn't sure anyone would believe it. "And we try to understand what the Exodus has become." Meanwhile, Commander Park Ji-won had begun investigating the historical records. If the Exodus had truly been one of Earth's colony ships, there had to be records of its mission and fate. What she found in the classified archives changed everything. "Admiral," she reported to Kang, "I've accessed the files on the Great Evacuation. The official story about Earth becoming uninhabitable was a cover. According to these documents, Earth was invaded. Invaded by whom? Beings from parallel dimensions. The files call them the Architects. They exist outside normal space-time and spread across realities like a virus. Earth's governments knew they couldn't fight them with conventional weapons." Park displayed images from the classified files. They showed cities being twisted into impossible shapes, people disappearing as reality itself was rewritten around them. The evacuation ships hadn't been fleeing environmental disaster but cosmic horror. The Exodus and 12 other ships were loaded with experimental weapons designed to fight dimensional threats. They were sent into deep space to develop defenses against enemies that existed outside reality. "Experimental weapons," Admiral Kang repeated slowly. "Weapons designed to fight beings that could manipulate reality." "Exactly. The survivors we saw weren't refugees. They were soldiers trained to fight impossible wars." The truth began to spread among the surviving ships. Humanity's colonial descendants had spent 3 centuries building a peaceful civilization among the stars. But their cousins, the ones who had fled Earth with the Exodus, had spent that same time learning to fight gods. Captain Lee called a meeting of the surviving human commanders. The 6 ship captains gathered virtually, their faces grim as they discussed their situation. "We need to contact Earth's colonial government," said Captain Kim Jae-wook of the Inchin's Dream. "They need to know what's happened." "And tell them what?" replied Captain Shin Dong-hyuk of the Daegu Rising. "That their ancestors have returned as beings that can erase reality? That we're all obsolete compared to what they've become? We tell them the truth, Lee insisted. The Exodus spared us for a reason. We're supposed to deliver a message. As the human captains debated, Lieutenant Kim made a disturbing discovery. The energy signatures left by the Exodus weren't fading. If anything, they were growing stronger, and they were appearing near other human colonies. Captain, she reported to Lee, I'm detecting similar energy patterns in 17 different star systems. All of them contain major human colonies. You mean there are more ships like the Exodus? At least 17. Probably more. They're positioning themselves near our most important settlements. The realization hit them all at once. The battle at Kepler Nebula hadn't been an isolated incident. It had been a demonstration, a warning shot fired across the bow of the entire galaxy. Captain O, one of the few alien survivors, managed to establish communication from his damaged crystal ship. His form flickered weakly as he spoke. Human captains, he transmitted. My people have legends about the architects. We thought they were myths, stories told to frighten children. But if they're real, if they're coming to this galaxy, what do the legends say? Admiral Kang asked. That they devour realities. They exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously and spread like an infection across parallel worlds. Once they arrive in a universe, they remake it according to their incomprehensible desires. And the only way to fight them? By becoming something beyond the physical universe yourself. By transcending the limitations of normal existence. The truth was becoming clear. The Exodus and its sister ships hadn't just survived their exile. They had evolved into something capable of fighting the architects, but that evolution had changed them so fundamentally that they were no longer entirely human. Commander Park discovered more files about the experimental weapons program. The document spoke of consciousness transfer, dimensional phase technology, and quantum evolution protocols. The humans aboard the Exodus had deliberately transformed themselves into beings that existed partially outside reality. They're not monsters, Park reported to Admiral Kang. They're guardians. They've spent 3 centuries preparing to defend this galaxy against threats we can't even imagine. But at what cost? Kang asked. They destroyed our fleet in 4 minutes. How do we know they won't decide we're threats too? The answer came from an unexpected source. Long-range sensors detected another ship approaching their position. It wasn't the Exodus, but it was clearly related. The vessel had the same reality-bending properties, the same impossible energy signature. This time, the ship didn't attack. It simply transmitted a message on all frequencies. This is Commander Lee, Sang-woo of the Terran defense ship Horizon. Representatives of the surviving vessels will board our ship for education and preparation. The architects have been detected at the galaxy's edge. Integration begins now. Captain Lee looked at her fellow survivors. The choice was simple but terrifying. They could resist and likely be destroyed, or they could accept transformation into something beyond human understanding. Admiral, she transmitted to Kang, I'm going aboard their ship. Someone needs to learn what they know. It could be a trap. Everything is a trap now, Lee replied. The question is whether we spring it ourselves or wait for something worse to find us. As preparation shuttles launched toward the waiting vessel, the survivors realized they were about to discover what 3 centuries of evolution could do to the human spirit. Whether they would remain recognizably human afterward was another question entirely. The interior of the Horizon defied every expectation Captain Lee had formed about starship design. The corridors seemed to stretch in directions that shouldn't exist, and the walls displayed patterns that hurt to look at directly. The ship felt alive in ways that went beyond simple artificial intelligence. Commander Lee Sang-woo met them in what might have been a briefing room, though the space constantly shifted its dimensions based on the number of people present. He looked human, but wrong in subtle ways. His eyes held depths that seemed to reflect multiple realities, and sometimes his outline blurred as if he existed in several places at once. "Welcome aboard," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that resonated in frequencies human ears weren't designed to hear. "I know this is overwhelming. We went through the same adjustment when we first began the transformation." Captain Lee fought down her instincts and tried to focus on the mission. "Commander, we need to understand what happened to the Exodus crew, what you've become." "We became what we needed to be," Sang-Woo replied simply. "When Earth fell to the architects, we learned that conventional existence wasn't enough. We had to evolve beyond the limitations of single-dimensional consciousness." Admiral Kang, who had insisted on joining the delegation despite the risks, studied the transformed human commander. "You're saying you're no longer entirely human?" "We're more human than ever," Sang-Woo corrected. "We've preserved the core of what makes us who we are while expanding our existence into realms your science hasn't discovered yet. We think in quantum states. We exist in probability clouds. We manipulate reality by understanding its fundamental codes." The explanation made Lieutenant Kim's head spin. "That's impossible. Consciousness can't exist outside of a physical brain." "Your consciousness can't," Sang-Woo agreed. "Ours can. Would you like to see?" Before anyone could object, the room changed. Suddenly they were standing in space watching a solar system under attack. But they weren't viewing a recording or a hologram. They were experiencing it directly, as if their consciousness had been transported across space and time. The architects were nothing like any enemy they could have imagined. They appeared as geometric impossibilities, shapes that existed in too many dimensions at once. Where they touched reality, space itself began to unravel. Planets became twisted parodies of their former selves. Stars aged millennia in moments. "This is what we've been fighting for 3 centuries, Sang-Woo's voice echoed in their minds. "Beings that exist across multiple realities simultaneously. They don't just conquer worlds. They remake entire universes according to their incomprehensible designs." Captain Lee watched in horror as she witnessed the fall of Earth. The planet didn't explode or burn. It simply became something else, transformed into a structure that her mind couldn't process. The billions of people who had called it home vanished into patterns of energy that served purposes beyond human understanding. "The weapons we brought from Earth were useless," Sang-Woo continued. "Nuclear missiles, plasma cannons, even antimatter. Bombs meant nothing to beings that could edit the laws of physics. We had to become something that could fight them on their own level." The vision shifted, showing the evacuation ships fleeing into deep space. 13 vessels carrying humanity's best and brightest, armed with experimental technologies that might allow them to develop new forms of warfare. "The process wasn't easy," Sang-Woo admitted. "We had to merge our consciousness with quantum computing systems. We learned to exist in probability states rather than fixed reality. Many of us died during the transformation. Some became something so alien that we had to retire them." Admiral Kang forced himself to speak despite the overwhelming nature of what he was experiencing. "How many of you are left?" "Enough," Sang-Woo replied. "We've built a network of consciousness that spans this entire galaxy. The Exodus and her sister ships are just the physical manifestations of something much larger. We are everywhere and nowhere, existing in the spaces between realities." The vision changed again, showing the galaxy as the transformed humans saw it. Reality appeared as layers of possibility, with streams of probability flowing between star systems. Hidden within these quantum currents were hundreds of ships like the Exodus, maintaining watch over potential threats. Captain Park Min-ho, who had remained silent during most of the demonstration, finally found his voice. "What do you want from us? Why spare the colonial fleets?" "Because you're still human," Sang-Woo answered. "Still capable of growth. The galaxy will need defenders who can bridge the gap between what we were and what we've become. You want us to transform like you did? We want to give you the choice. The architects have found this galaxy. Our sensors detect them at the edge of known space, already beginning to remake reality according to their desires. You can face them as you are and be consumed, or you can evolve. Lieutenant Kim struggled with the implications. What would happen to our crews, our families, the people we're sworn to protect? They would be safe, Sang-woo assured her. The transformation preserves everything that makes you who you are while expanding your capabilities beyond current limitations. You would still be human, just more. The room shifted back to its original configuration, leaving the delegation feeling disoriented and changed by what they had witnessed. The visions had lasted only minutes, but they felt like they had lived through years of impossible experiences. We're not forcing this choice on anyone, Sang-woo continued. But time is running short. The architects have learned to travel between realities faster than we anticipated. They'll reach the core systems within months, not years. Admiral Kang looked at his fellow survivors. What about the other species? The aliens in our coalition? Most of them lack the neural flexibility for consciousness expansion, Sang-woo replied sadly. Their minds are too rigidly structured to survive the transformation. But we'll protect them as best we can. And if we refuse? Then you'll fight the architects with conventional weapons and die conventionally. We won't force evolution on anyone, but we also won't allow the galaxy to fall because of fear or stubbornness. Captain Lee made her decision. I'll do it. My crew and I will undergo the transformation. Hyo Jin, you don't know what you're volunteering for, Park warned. I know what I saw, she replied firmly. Earth is gone. Billions of our ancestors died fighting something we can't even comprehend with normal weapons. If there's a chance to save what's left of humanity and protect the galaxy, I have to take it. One by one, the other human captains agreed. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Evolution or extinction, growth or death. The transformation began immediately. Captain Lee felt her consciousness expanding beyond the confines of her physical brain. She could suddenly perceive dimensions that had been invisible before, see the quantum threads that connected all reality. Her crew aboard the Soul's Pride underwent the same process, their minds linked to computing systems that allowed them to process information in ways that defied previous understanding. They remained themselves, but they became more than themselves. Across the galaxy, similar transformations were taking place. The surviving colonial ships became something new, part of a network of consciousness that spanned star systems. They were still human, but they were also something greater. As the process completed, Captain Lee understood what Commander Rowe had meant about becoming something others might fear. She could feel the architects approaching, their alien presence already beginning to warp space at the galaxy's edge. But she could also feel her transformed allies, hundreds of evolved humans maintaining watch over thousands of worlds. They were ready for the coming war. The message was spreading through every inhabited system. The galaxy's strongest armadas had lasted 4 minutes, but humanity's children were home. The real battle was about to begin, and this time they would fight, with weapons the architects had never faced before. In the end, evolution wasn't about becoming monsters. It was about becoming gods. And sometimes protecting the innocent required divine power. The old galaxy was dead. The new one would be defended by beings that existed beyond the boundaries of conventional reality. Humanity had finally come home.